All right, the Bank of Canada just cut its key rate for the first time since March. In this week's video, we're going to cover a few topics. We're going to talk about what specifically that means for the real estate market, what it means for mortgages, and then I'm also going to swing over and talk about a enhanced tax proposal by a Vancouver City Councillor that's going to negatively affect developers in this city. So I'm going to skip the formal introduction, but if this is your first time here, my name is Hassan. I'm a Vancouver realtor. I want to jump right into the content. Bank of Canada cuts its key interest rate. It's now at 2.50% after a 25 basis point cut. Now, this was widely expected by pretty much all of the big banks except for RBC. RBC was saying that the Bank of Canada was likely to hold rates. Now, as we move forward, what are we going to see as a next step? Most economists and big banks are thinking there's going to be one or two more rate cuts. If not by the end of this year, then by sometime next year. Let's talk about what this is going to do for mortgages. I was on the BC Today show on CBC the other day talking about what sort of implications this rate cut will have on the Vancouver real estate market. I'll link to that video here. I suggest you take a look. We were joined with the president of the BC Mortgage Brokers Association as well. So check out that video if you like. But in terms of what happens with mortgages, your existing mortgage, for instance, if you're in a variable rate mortgage, two things happen. You may have an adjustable payment. Basically, if you're with Scotia, you'll have an adjustable payment. If you're with the other big banks, you'll have a fixed payment. On an adjustable payment, when the rate gets cut, your payments come down immediately. And it's just under $15 per month for every $100,000 that you owe based on a 25-year amortization. So you can do the math on that based on, how much outstanding mortgage balance you do have. Now, most of the big banks have a fixed payment, even with variable. So what that means is your payment is not going to change, but the amount of money that is going to go towards your principal versus interest will increase. More money going to principal, less going to interest. If you are on a fixed rate, nothing changes. Fixed rates, they basically follow the bond market. And what's interesting about the bond market this year, it's been relatively volatile in the sense that you're not having huge swings up and down, but it's really hard to predict what's happening with the bond market. And a lot of it has to do with all of the uncertainties surrounding Canada, US. So even when there is a rate cut like we have right now, the banks have been generally slower to react with their fixed rate and their fixed rate changes. But if we look at it from a rate perspective after this cut, you have variable rates now in the lower fours if you're an uninsured mortgage, meaning you're putting 20% or more down. And in fact, I think that variable rate now would touch 3.99-ish if you are on an insured mortgage, putting less than 20% down. Now, if we do see another rate cut, perhaps in October, there's another announcement towards the end of the year as well. If we do see another rate cut, that would swing that variable rate into the threes. There's not a huge discrepancy now between variable rates and fixed. So I was talking with one of my mortgage broker contacts just the other day, and he's saying, a lot more people now are opting towards variable. And generally people will do that if they foresee there's going to be future rate cuts. You take the variable rate, and if there's going to be more rate cuts, again, either your payment's going to decrease downwards, or you're going to pay off more principal, and you can lock it in at a future date if you wanted to. But more people are taking the variable rates. There's also been some pretty significant 3-year fixed promos from some of the banks recently. I've seen as low as 3.69 on a 3-year fixed with some, I don't want to say catches, but with some specific criteria needing to be a short close. But that's a pretty aggressive rate given what we've seen over the past couple of years or so. What's happening with mortgages and the mortgage market is, a lot of these banks, when sales activity is down and new mortgage originations are down, the banks are also in a situation where they're hungry for more business. Their book of business is decreasing as well. So a couple things happen. They get a little bit more aggressive with the rates for new clients, but they're also being extremely aggressive with retaining their clients when it comes time for renewal. So they're actually starting to offer things that you would normally see on a new mortgage origination, for example, cash back. They're starting to offer these on renewal as well, because it's actually a lot cheaper for banks, but also any company, to retain an existing client that you already have. So they're throwing a bit more money to retain you. So if you're going for a mortgage renewal at some point this year, keep that in mind, that you are in the driver's seat. You can negotiate. You should shop around. The bank really wants your business, again, because mortgage business is down all around. So keep that in mind. Know that you can negotiate. Get on the renewal path early. Don't wait until the last minute. So you might be up against the gun and you don't have a lot of time to negotiate, but you are in the driver's seat. So that's essentially what's happening with mortgage rates and how that's played out by what the Bank of Canada did. Now, in the Bank of Canada rate announcement, there was some question, okay, were they actually going to cut? Inflation has been relatively sticky, at least core inflation. But I think the big driver for the Bank of Canada was Canada's labor market, unemployment above 7%. So I think this was kind of the big fear for the Bank of Canada. They didn't have too much forward-looking guidance to give us. They're going to, take things as they come. They're going to look at the employment data. They're, of course, going to look at the GDP data. They're going to look at CPI inflation. The next rate announcement, October 29th. So, we'll track all of that on this channel as we get towards that date, so we have a bit of an idea what they might do at the next rate announcement. All right, so I want to hop over and talk about this new tax, or I should say enhanced tax proposal to the empty homes tax in Vancouver. There's a Vancouver City Councillor that has basically put on the table a proposal to increase the empty homes tax. Now, from 3% to 5%. Now, just a reminder for everyone, empty homes tax is a City of Vancouver thing. It's not to be confused with the BC speculation and vacancy tax. How these taxes work is they do it based on assessed value, the latest assessed value. So empty homes tax right now is 3% of the latest assessed value. The speculation and vacancy tax goes up next year if you are a Canadian citizen to 1%. So this would actually be on top of that. The city councillor wants to increase it to 5%. Plus the 1% BC speculation and vacancy tax. But I would say the bigger piece of this proposal is they want to actually remove the exemption that developers have with new unsold vacant units. So back in 2023, I want to say, it was expected that this empty homes tax was going to increase to 5%. And I want to be clear that, this 5% proposal, it's not being put in place by the current city council. It's a city councillor that's putting it on the table, but it was supposed to increase at that time. And I believe what the city said was, it's not a good idea for us to do this right now. We're going to leave it at 3%. But we're also going to create an exemption for developers, because developers are holding on to these units, and so they created a exemption for these developers that had units that were really challenging or almost impossible to sell, so they wouldn't have to pay any sort of empty homes tax. And in fact, at the time, they actually gave money back to the developers in empty homes tax that they had paid. So this city councillor is saying, no, we need to charge the developers now 1%, and we need to escalate that every year. Now, if you followed my channel, we've talked ad nauseum about the development situation, the struggle it is for developers with the units they currently hold, the struggle it is for developers that have projects they're trying to get off the ground that they can't get off the ground because they can't sell enough units, how over leveraged the developers are. Now, I know a lot of people, they don't have sympathy for developers in our city, but I think it's very important that we take a step back and we really understand the role that developers have played, not just with housing in our city, but also all of the amenities and a lot of the stuff that we enjoy as a community has been put together, built, developed, and funded by developers in times when they were good. So For example, back before the province did mass rezoning, the developers were paying amenity contributions when they needed to rezone properties to be able to, for example, rezone from, say, low-story residential to high-story. When they had to make these sort of changes, they would have to pay money to the cities as amenity contributions, so the cities could create amenities surrounding the additional housing. Now, at the same time, the city would say, okay, 20%, and still do 20%, 25%, sometimes 30% of these units have to be below market. They would give the developers additional density. And so the developers will say, sure, okay, we would do this. And so when times are good, this city is thriving truthfully off of development dollars, off of our property tax dollars, but off of development dollars. And when there's money to be made, people kind of turn a blind eye. Everyone's they're okay with it because the developers are making money. So sure, we'll do more affordable housing. Sure, we'll pay the amenity contributions begrudgingly, but they do it. And so what happens now is the province comes along and they basically mass rezone everything, and they say, look, we're going to allow high density near SkyTrain within 200 meters. You can build such and such stories. So that takes out the amenity contribution portion of it. And so the cities are relying on the development cost charges. So their revenue goes down. So now we have a city councillor, looking at it, probably licking their chops and saying, okay, let's go after these developers that have these vacant units that they're unable to sell. So let's essentially kick them when they're down. This same group of private developers that have basically uplifted our city over the last 10, 15 years, again, by contributing to the amenities that we have. And let's get some money. This is a cash grab. Let's pull some money out of them. And it just kind of goes to show you everyone is broke in this city and in this province. When I say everyone, I mean the governments. Everyone's revenue is down, and so everyone is trying to look for different ways that they can squeeze out more money. So the city councillor puts it on the table that they have the 1% per year on the developers, and then it escalates, basically squeezing juice out of developers and money that they just do not have. Now, the fortunate thing is, sounds like this is very unlikely to pass because, again, in 2023, this was on the table and it was shot down. And the premise behind shooting it down, especially going from 3% to 5%, is their studies showed that if you go too high with the tax, you actually promote tax evasion. At what point are you encouraging people to make false declarations about whether their properties are empty or not? And they found that bumping from 3 to 5% may actually do that. But, to look at this proposal and to think now is the time to go after the developers who can barely pay their bills, who are going into receivership left, right, and center. Construction is already dying in this city. This would absolutely just put the noose on construction, and it would just be in my opinion, just a horrible thing to do at this current time, or really at any time. Taxation. Real estate taxation in this province has done nothing to bring down home prices. So this would be just a cash grab by this city councillor. All right, I'm going to leave this video at that. We covered a few different topics. I hope you did enjoy and you learned something. If you did learn something, please consider liking and sharing this video with someone. They could also learn from it. And again, my name's Hassan. I'm a Vancouver realtor. If you wanted to chat about your real estate situation with me, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link that you see on the screen, or all my contact info is below. You can just send me a text, give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever's easiest for you. But I want to thank you for taking time this week to watch this video, and I look forward to seeing you next week.